Double marks, double voices of college football. I really hated to do that to you, but we will change it here momentarily. We had plans to do something else, but we are promoting at the same time our program series, all-time program rankings here at the Voice of College Football. Just released the final of the conference videos, the all Big Ten team of sorts just released. We had intended to space it out a little bit better to release that video earlier in the day around noon and then come on live with our conversation tonight on TV times just announced, kickoff times announced as well. But life gets in the way and therefore delayed our editing process and delayed our delivery of the video. But it's on the streets. It's right there for you to enjoy. Big Ten all-time rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. So you got the Pac-12, the ACC, the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big Ten. We're going to wrap it all together. We are going to present it in one beautiful bow, all-time program rankings. And then we're going to follow up, of course, with live streams on every conference. Those are going to start here in just a couple days. So you let me know which conference we should start with, and we will. We'll probably go in order. We'll go with the Pac-12 first. So big conference, all-time program rankings, live streams starting in just a couple days. Big night here at the Voice of College Football. Our Clemson guys rev up on Thursday night. We're going to see them at either 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. Between Jordan and Edward, they're jumping all over the place between 7 and 8. We are just happy that they deliver Clemson football talk every Thursday night, so please join them tonight. Also, we got Joey Foster in the Big 12 live show. That's coming up at, I believe, 7 o'clock tonight. Check out the schedule that we post on the community page each day. That keeps me in line. And then at 9 o'clock tonight, wow, 9 Eastern, the big premiere of the Michigan Call-In Show. And I think the naming rights on that are still to be announced. But it is the Michigan Call-In Show coming up tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, only on the Michigan channel. So we appreciate you stopping by here, the Voice of College Football. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. As always, the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Most important statement I could make tonight, by far, it's not even close. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. Doesn't cost you a penny. It is your one way to contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. You take some of Amazon's money, you move it to the Voice of College Football. All right, let's get to it. Let's look at the kickoff times that have been announced over the last 2 days. Not had a chance to get on this. I was going to produce a video because a number of things came to mind. Of course, it's always fun to look at what networks pick up what games, and then also to see when they are slotting the games in terms of this time sequence. So, for example, on that opening Saturday, Clemson, Georgia. Does that not just scream noon game at you? Clemson and Georgia playing at noon Eastern. That surprised me. Not that we don't have big games at noon all year, but that's a Fox thing. So I'm not hung up on the game times. Probably because this is my business now. Whenever the games are on, I'm going to be here from noon until 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning anyway. So I could care less when the games are. I've always loved noon college football. But again, I get it. Wife, kids, work, obligations, all the things that you guys have going. You've got preferences as to noon game. Some people like the games early. They don't like the anticipation and waiting all day. Other people like the build-up. Obviously, if you're traveling to the game, if you're tailgating at the game, if you want to have a good time, if you want to prime yourself for the festivities and the kickoff, everybody's got a different take on it. I think my buddy that's a Buckeyes fan, Steve, I believe he enjoys the noon kickoffs. I think he likes to get them over with, get the game out of the way, then he can do what he needs to do the rest of the day. I don't think he likes the late kickoffs. He goes to bed at 10 or 10:30 at night, so he doesn't like the late kickoffs from what I remember. My buddy Keith, big, huge Buckeyes fan. I don't know what he prefers, but he goes to bed early as well. So he might prefer the early kickoff times. I've always thought that it would be interesting living on the West Coast because I've been out there on occasion on college football Saturdays. I had reason to go out there several times back in 2009, 10, 11, in that range. And I spent some college football Saturdays out on the West Coast, Southern California. And it was interesting to then you could more plan if you had significant other or whatever you had going on. And then if they wanted to go out that night, well, you started watching college football at 9 a.m. So that was kind of different, but kind of cool that you got your day started, because otherwise, what can you do with your day before noon? Not much. I tend to get some errands run, maybe meet somebody for breakfast, do those sorts of things, maybe get a workout in, and then noon arrives very quickly. So again, for those of you that are just tuning in, no, I'm not that narcissistic. This is just simply, we wanted to post something else back here, but I thought, hey, this did not work in terms of what I wanted to post, but this will be a work in progress. I also didn't accommodate because I didn't get to see it until right when we came on, the glare on the screen. Work in progress, folks. We are tweaking as we go. But many of you will be glad to see the helmets back. I actually didn't intend on bringing the helmets back. I contemplated pitching them all in the trash. I contemplated that, thought about it. Actually, this has another facet to it that I forgot about, because we also, do we want to go with that? I guess. Does it matter? Okay. Anyway, can't really see it during the daylight anyway. But so reworking the set here. But I thought about, let's get rid of helmets. Helmets, tried and true. It's been done before. It's been done to death. Everybody does helmets. Get rid of the helmets. However, brought the helmets with me. I just put the shelving together last night late, and actually Windexed all the helmets. So wanted to make it extra special for you so that they were extra shiny. Got a Notre Dame fan who contacted me the other day. He is sick to his stomach seeing the brown, what he called brown, Notre Dame helmet. I don't know where it is. I kept it out of sight, I guess. It's back there somewhere. The Notre Dame helmet. And he can't wait to give me a new Notre Dame helmet. But we got out of the business of taking helmets a long, long time ago. But we'll have to set that back up again. So again, appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. Let's get to the kickoff times. Amazon links in the description section. If I failed to mention that, same shopping experience, doesn't cost you a penny. The link to call the show, if you want to give me a call, talk college football, and anything's on the table, we can talk about anything. Then, yes, absolutely. Anything is on the table. But I'm going to run through the kickoff times that were announced. I checked the headlines before we came on. I don't see anything pressing. They're going to be serving alcohol at Michigan Stadium. Yeah, don't really care. Have no opinion about that. Just so they just so they take it out of the hands of these drunks before they hit the road. That's all I care about. So get the alcohol out of people's hands at some point in the game, whenever that's supposed to be. Halftime, maybe they'll serve in the first half. We could give that a look. I don't much care. All right, let's get to these kickoff times. We have somebody trying to join us, and hopefully they will be able to join us. But somebody's trying to call in right now. They must be having some issues. But why don't we? I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. Maybe we could post these times. Up on the board here. I don't know that we'll see them. So we've got, of course, a week 0 set of games. You're not going to be able to see them, my bad. But I can see them. So we'll leave them up there. So we've got SMU taking on Nevada. And that is a TBD, as well as Montana State, New Mexico, Delaware State, Hawaii. So the game that's been announced for week 0, of course, in regards to a kickoff time and a network, is ESPN covering Boston College, or not Boston College, that's Florida State's opponent the next week, Georgia Tech and Florida State. And so here we go. Oh, we've got a caller coming in. We'll take the call in just a second. Let's look at week 0. SMU, Nevada. Nevada's been awful for a few years now. Don't know what they have coming back. And of course, this is SMU's first game as a member of the ACC. How about that? Montana State, New Mexico, Delaware State, Hawaii. Florida State and Georgia Tech. That's going to be a noon game. And I believe and this is very important to many of you, the College Game Day crew is headed to Dublin, Ireland. And I believe I read that this is the first ever College Game Day overseas. All right, let's get to our first caller. And we've got Megan on the line. Megan.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Please excuse my voice. I have a very bad dose of bronchitis.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
You want to get rid of your helmet? Send the USC one to me, please.
We want to see what you got there.
So
you get
this
2 USC helmets.
Caleb Williams.
Yours looks to be a brighter. Yes, yours is a much brighter.
Oh, this is 2 years old. So I've got Caleb.
Shinier.
And Drake London.
That looks.
And speaking of USC, Mark, of course, they move conferences this year. And I'm just curious. Excuse me. What do you think their chances are in the new conference? I have no idea. 25-year fan. Just interested to hear how you feel about it.
Well, I'll tell you what the general consensus is, and then I'll give my opinion. The general consensus is that they're going to be competitive, but they're not expected to vie for the championship. That's supposed to be Ohio State and Oregon, maybe Michigan, and Penn State is typically ranked ahead of USC. So they're supposed to be behind those 4 teams. However, it rarely works out the way everybody predicts in the preseason. And I do have some concerns about Miller Moss at quarterback because he's only played 1 game and he was outstanding in that game, but it was 1 game. And I believe that the defense is going to be just so markedly better with D'Anton Lynn running the defense.
Yeah, as I said, oh, my voice, excuse me.
I hope it doesn't hurt you to talk.
No, it's just very dry because it's 8 a.m. and 8:30 and I literally just woke up. Yeah, I don't honestly know. I was there at the Coliseum 2 years ago for the 66, whatever it was, against Rice beatdown, if you can call it that. Who do you think USC fans, aside from Miller Moss, should keep an eye on? Do you have anyone to keep an eye on, I guess?
Well, everybody's going to keep an eye on Zachariah Branch because he's so exciting. It's going to be interesting to see how he's utilized. Now, Megan, we have a USC show twice a week.
Yes,
I didn't know if you were aware. Okay.
Yes, I've been on it a couple of times.
All right. Very good. Very good. So we've got one coming
Excuse
up on Friday night with our
Mhm.
two experts, Tim and Matt. And then,
Yes, I need to talk to Tim, actually. Thank you for reminding me.
because Tim will tell you that the two places to watch are both lines of scrimmage. And
Yes.
that's because of the issues last year, but it's also because of them moving to a league where the line play is going to be superior to what they faced in the Pac-12.
Yeah, good point. Yep. All right, thanks, Mark. Sorry, I need to go and get a glass of water
Oh,
badly. I'm so
absolutely do that. Well, it was nice to see you and hear from you, Megan. Thank you so much for
Thank you
joining us.
so much, and thank you for keeping me awake till, like, midnight every night you do the other show, by the way. That's why I'm up so late. Yeah, but no, nice to meet you, Mark, and, yeah, thanks.
Thanks for calling, Megan.
Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
Megan calling from down under. So it's a pleasure to hear from Megan. Megan's been joining us on our Wake Up College Football show in the mornings. So now I find out that she's been watching the USC show. How about that? So again, I apologize, not able to show you anything that you can really see here, but we'll post the schedule as we had it up here. And that was our intent tonight, is to look through this. I should have posted a video, but I just didn't get to it, but that was my intent. So again, Florida State, Georgia Tech. This is brilliant out of Florida State. This is brilliant. What is brilliant, Mark? It's brilliant that for the 5th consecutive year, is it the 5th straight year? I think COVID messed it up, 2020, but it would be a 5th consecutive year, 2019 against Virginia Tech, 2021 against Notre Dame, 22 against LSU, 23 against LSU, and now 24. Now they double us up, does Florida State, with the only game that anyone is going to want to see. Will I watch these other games? Yes. If I've got nothing better to do, I will have no issue watching any college football games in week 0. I love the week 0 schedule. It's usually much better than this. There's usually some more interesting group of 5 matchups than this. SMU and Nevada, that's going to have a pretty decent spot somewhere, I would think. Can't imagine that there's anything else going on that ESPN's not going to double up with a night game. And I would think it would be SMU and Nevada. I would think. But that has yet to be announced, as you can see. Florida State, Georgia Tech, should that be a decent game? Probably not. However, Florida State has lost as much talent as just about anyone in the country. Georgia Tech won 7 games last year, but they were this close to just winning 5. Because if Mario Cristobal kneels down, then Georgia Tech goes 5-7 instead of 6-6, and they don't get a chance to win a bowl game. And we would have a much different perception about Georgia Tech football coming off of 5-7 than we do at 7-6 with a bowl victory. Romello Height, big offseason acquisition for Georgia Tech from USC. And Haynes King is back at quarterback. And I am a bit of a fan of Haynes King. I like Haynes King. I'm not selling him as an all-conference quarterback. That belongs to Cam Ward and others. But I too think that Haynes King is a gamer. Florida State, Georgia Tech. Florida State's a 2-touchdown favorite in that game. Noon, ESPN. Similar circumstance to last year when Notre Dame took on Navy, although that game was over after a quarter, and Sam Hartman lit up Navy. They couldn't score. That game was a noon game, I believe, on ESPN over in Dublin. All right, as we take it to week 1, and we'll check out to see what games have been released. North Carolina, Minnesota play for a second consecutive season. The Heels won in Chapel Hill last year, 31-13 over the Gophers. And of course, Minnesota will have a different quarterback with Max Brosmer, the transfer in from New Hampshire. North Carolina as well with Max Johnson experiencing his third stop, first one outside the SEC, former Texas A&M LSU starter. So I am curious to see Minnesota, North Carolina. Minnesota has the lowest win total in the Big Ten, according to Vegas. It's expected to be a rough go for Minnesota this year in the Big Ten. And so that's the Thursday fair, and there is nothing there. So what has happened the last few seasons on Thursday night? And I'm curious as to see how this is going to play out this year, because I'm not seeing another quality game. Is that ESPN has kicked off a game at 7 or 7:30, and then Fox kicks in with a game at 8. ESPN shows a non-conference game, and then Fox has, for 2 consecutive years, shown a Big Ten Week 1 matchup. Nebraska, Minnesota last year. Penn State, Purdue, really good football game 2 years ago, while ABC or ESPN has countered with Florida, Utah last year, and the year before was West Virginia, Pitt. But I'm not seeing another game here. I'm seeing North Carolina, Minnesota. Nobody is going to. Okay. That's right. ESPN is going to show Colorado hosting North Dakota State and FCS Power. And this is going to be a challenge for the Buffs, but ESPN is going in prime time with, pardon the pun, yeah, him. That's right. So what would normally not be a choice for a network on opening Thursday night now becomes a game of intrigue. North Dakota State, know nothing about them, although they've been highly successful, but in regards to personnel, know nothing about them. Shadur Sanders is back. Shiloh Sanders is back. Dylan Edwards is gone. Dallin Hayden, the new starting running back with Colorado. And of course, the guy that's arguably the best athlete in the country, Travis Hunter. So that's your ESPN game. So you can bank on Fox countering with North Carolina, Minnesota, unless they just give up and say, we're not going to show a game. I can't imagine. They're going to go Big Ten, Minnesota hosting North Carolina, I believe, is what we've got there. All right. So then on Friday, and of course, more importantly than all these games, is going to be the big 24-hour kickoff extravaganza marathon here at the Voice of College Football, where we go live 24 consecutive hours leading into the season. Of course, that's what's on everybody's mind right now, is when is that going to start? We have started it at various times, but we think last year we came up with a formula that works. Friday night, Temple, Oklahoma. Wow. Can't wait for that one. Is Oklahoma going to be, if they don't have a 4-touchdown lead at halftime, then there might be something wrong. Temple at Oklahoma, that's the ESPN primetime game on Friday. But then we get treated to a more interesting game, at least a couple Power 5 teams, as Stanford moves to the ACC. They open up their status, their new era as an ACC school hosting TCU. If you recall, TCU and Stanford played one of the more entertaining bowl games in recent memory. Let's see, that would have been about 7 years ago, 2017, I believe, in the Alamo Bowl. Stanford took a huge lead. TCU came back. It was Stanford power against TCU speed, and the Horned Frogs won it in a wild finish. These two teams aren't nearly as good as those two teams. TCU at Stanford, that's the nightcap on ESPN. On Saturday, and let's see if any other TV networks are listed. Maybe ESPN is not listing any of the other networks. That could be the situation. That could be it. Maybe Fox has announced Minnesota, North Carolina for Thursday night. All right, on Saturday the 31st, we know that the ABC triple header is Clemson, Georgia at noon, Miami and Florida from the Swamp at 3:30 Eastern, and then the nightcap is Texas A&M and Notre Dame. It doesn't get too much better than that as a triple header. Love all those matchups. Can't wait, especially want to see Georgia and Clemson, but the other two as well. Between Florida and Miami, the loser of that game really is going to have to fight off some bad PR, because for Florida, it's going to be, wow, if you couldn't win this game at home, Miami's probably the 8th best team on your schedule, then you're in big trouble. If Miami loses, the narrative's going to be more in line with, well, we know that you can still have a decent season record-wise because the schedule's so bad, but you got to be better than this. You have to be able to beat Florida. All right, so here we go. Week 1, August 31st on Saturday. We see a lot of big teams taking on a lot of little teams. But Virginia Tech and Vandy, that has yet to be announced. That game has ESPNU written all over it. Or it could be an SEC network game. That's probably more likely. The Michigan-Fresno State game was announced. So, unfortunately, me going to the ESPN site for these game times was not the best strategy. Actually, I was editing our Big Ten all-time rankings just up until the time that we came on. So I did not find a favorable site, did not look for one, didn't have time. So we'll have to hunt around and see. But I believe that that has been picked up as a night game. I do believe Michigan and Fresno State, that's a CBS night game. We'll get through the schedule here, and then we will find a more accurate listing. Ohio State and Akron, that's got to be on the Big Ten Network at noon. Penn State, West Virginia, has that been announced? We will find it. If it has, it's obviously not an ESPN game. Who else is playing that's halfway decent? Syracuse and Ohio. Look out. Fran Carter and Syracuse. Just watch out for that one. Okay, here we have the triple header on ABC. Clemson, Georgia at noon. Miami, Florida from the Swamp. The Clemson, Georgia game. Okay, that's in Athens. I thought that was a neutral site game. That's what it's been in the past, but it's listed as an at. May want to double check on that. Colorado State at Texas. Okay, sure, whatever. So the ESPN lineup, for as strong as the ABC lineup is, the ESPN lineup is putrid, awful. So I will have it locked in on ABC the entire day. Colorado State at Texas. Okay. Western Kentucky in primetime against Alabama. All right, sure. Then on Sunday, USC and LSU. If I could only watch one game the entire weekend, I'd be tempted to choose Notre Dame, Texas A&M. I would be tempted Clemson, Georgia, but I would go with USC and LSU. Huge game for both. Then Boston College, Florida State. And as I mentioned at the top of the show here, of course, Florida State has in the past been in good graces in the ACC. No longer is that the case. That typically what happens when you sue someone. But the ACC knows where its bread is buttered, and Florida State has done a great job of taking opportunity here. So I don't know who's initiated Florida State's recent schedules, but they have scheduled week one better than anyone in college football for quite some time now. They had marquee games in 2015 and 16 against Ole Miss. They had a super marquee game as a 1-3 matchup against Bama in 2017. And at least one of those Ole Miss games maybe it was just one game against Ole Miss, and they were down early and came back. Really good game in Orlando. That was a standalone game. Florida State's not just drawing good opponents on opening weekend. They are playing the games on Sunday and Monday night. Why is that important? Because you have the spotlight to yourself. For as great as Clemson and Georgia will be at noon on that Saturday, there will be people watching other college football games. For as bad as the rest of the schedule is, there will be people watching other college football games. Florida State's got the stage to itself on Monday night, just like they did last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before, either on Sunday or Monday. Good move by Florida State. And who's not going to be talking about Florida State leaving the ACC? That is going to be the narrative, especially with Boston College possibly trailing in that game by 3 touchdowns in the second half. So that's week one. And again, we will get to the complete TV listings because I'm disappointed that they're not here. We're off to week 2 and a Friday game, no Thursday game. Everybody knows why, right? No Thursday game on the 5th. You know why. You know why. The king of all sports, the king of all television entertainment in America now, they play on Thursday night. College football wants nothing to do with that. Don't want to touch the Chiefs and the whoever they're going to play on opening night. That's become a thing in the NFL. They have copied from the old Kickoff Classic formula of having the national champion. Remember Penn State 1983 against Nebraska? They got steamrolled, but they were the defending national champion and just a mere shadow of themselves. And they took on Nebraska. And you had an Auburn-Miami game in 85. You had Ohio State and Alabama played. And then that game morphed from the Kickoff Classic, Meadowlands, on a Wednesday or Thursday night into a Saturday game. But in those formative years of introducing primetime weeknight college football games, and I'm trying to think who carried those games. I think those were TBS games, I believe. That the NFL has gone back to that formula. of its national champion, just like college football did in those days, its national champion playing a primetime weeknight game to open the next season. BYU and SMU will kick off on Friday night. If I was college football, this NFL game is going to start at 8:30. Kick off a game at 6. I'd have a Thursday game at 6. Because people that want to watch football are going to watch the game. And it doesn't have to be a great game, but a decent game. I'm throwing them North Carolina State and Memphis, or, some decent non-conference game. And I'd put it on Thursday at 6. And football junkies that are geared up to watch the NFL, but just want to watch football and don't want to listen to a bunch of talking heads for 2 hours will watch the college football game. They'll be in the fourth quarter. And if it's a bad game or a neutral game, they'll move on to the NFL, but you still had them for 2.5 hours. Or if it's a great game, then they will either miss the first few minutes of the NFL game thinking, you know what, it doesn't matter if I pick this up midway through the first quarter. I want to watch this game. I want to watch the conclusion of NC State and Memphis because it's 27-24 with 5 minutes left. Or they'll figure out multiple devices. Regardless, you got them for 2.5 hours. That's the move I would make if I was college football. But let's understand the conferences are dealing with the networks, and I apologize to the people calling because I couldn't see you until just now because I had that screen on full screen. So we'll get to the calls right now. But my point is that you take advantage of whatever TV opportunities you have. I'm not a TV executive. There are smarter people than me with more information looking at these things. So that's what they have determined. But I'm playing my college football game for 2.5 hours before the NFL takes over. It's what I would do. Welcome in, Jackson, to the Voice of College Football. What's going on tonight?
It's going pretty good, Mark. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. What do you got for us?
Well, I'm thinking about where they're going to put Arkansas, Oklahoma State. That looks like a 2:30 game on ESPN. I don't know where they're going to put Cal Auburn. It looks like it's going to be on ESPN2.
Is this week 1?
Oh, that's week 2.
I know I've got week 2 up. Is that what you're looking at? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Let me see. Arizona State, Mississippi State. I wonder if they're going to put that on Fox Sports 1 for Big 12 After Dark.
Could be. I could see that.
It would be a huge ratings win in a way. Well, we know Texas, Michigan is going to be on Big Noon Kickoff.
Yes.
Nebraska, Colorado's on NBC 6:30. Iowa State's on CBS. Illinois, Kansas, I'd have to say that's going to be a Fox Sports 1 game, or it's going to be on Big Ten Network. What do you think, Mark?
Where do you see that game? So they're playing in Champaign.
Yep.
Near Kansas last year. Okay, there it is. Well, to take an educated guess, I'd have to try to map the whole thing out. But that game, I could see either being an ESPN2 game, or I guess that's an FS1 game. You've got a Big 12 against a Big 10. Maybe that's a FS1 game at 6 or 7 o'clock. Maybe it's the 4 o'clock game.
Maybe they could move it up to Friday night because of that TV contract, to where Fox and Fox Sports 1 are going to have at least one Friday night game during each week of the season.
That's right.
So that could be the Friday night game.
That could be.
Boise State, Oregon, that's going to be a Big Ten After Dark game.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, yeah. That would be a huge one right there.
I think the Big Ten Network is hoping that drops in their lap.
Oh yeah. Eastern Michigan, Washington. I don't see that going near the Fox networks. That's a Big Ten Network game right there. Or it could be
Yes.
on Peacock.
Yes.
And App State, scary. Oof. Don't overlook them. Oof.
Okay. Yeah. App State, Clemson, ACC Network game, most likely.
Yeah. It's anytime they go against a Power 5 opponent, they always beat the spread. Oh, there's a Big Ten Network game, Duke Northwestern.
Duke and Northwestern. Yeah, could well be. I think they played. Well, shoot, they've played, as you well know, I think 7 out of 8 years.
Yeah.
I know that game's been on FS1 recently as well. Syracuse, Georgia Tech.
That could be an ESPNU or ACC network game.
Who's going to have the noon ESPN game, since that is, once we get into conference play, that SEC like number 3 game slot?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's going to be a toss-up.
Because that's what came to mind when I saw Georgia Tech and Syracuse.
There's Virginia Wake Forest.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, we got the rematch from 2022, Kansas State Tulane.
We do.
Yep. That looks like it can be a great game. Wondering what John Shire's going to do. Can he sustain the success in New Orleans? That's going to be the question.
We've got Baylor and Utah getting back together.
Oh, yeah. Last year was a crazy ending. Thankfully for Texas Tech, they're not going to get cursed by the CW. That's got to be a Fox Sports 1 game.
Yeah. If anybody missed it out there, the CW signed a contract with the Pac-12 / Pac-2, Washington State and Oregon State. And the headline is a bit deceiving because it says that Oregon State and Washington State have signed to play its home games on the CW and Fox Sports. Well, that sounds good, but we're talking about 11 games on the CW and 2 games on the Fox networks. And Oregon State has a chance of being on Fox. I can't imagine, as you're mentioning, Texas Tech and Washington State, that's got FS1 written all over it.
Yeah. I'd hate to be anyone going on the CW. That's just going to be a curse right there.
The CW did better numbers than I anticipated it doing last year. I will say that.
That is true. North Carolina State didn't get snake bit by the CW, though. Oregon State, San Diego State looks like a CBS Sports Network game.
Yeah, it does.
I kind of feel like they're going to put the Backyard Brawl for Week 3 on ESPN Saturday night. Because, I mean, who's going to get excited over Georgia, Kentucky? I mean, if you got to choose between the two, which is better, the Backyard Brawl or Georgia, Kentucky?
I think they'll opt for Georgia, Kentucky, I guess. That's had a pretty prominent spot the last few years. That was a CBS game 2 years ago. Last year, it was an ESPN primetime game.
True. But Kentucky hasn't beaten them since 2009. I don't think they're going to anytime soon. As for Pitt, that's where dreams go to die in college football. And Tennessee, North Carolina State, that's going to be an ABC game.
Okay, there it is. Yeah, I like that matchup. I think that's a good game and one to look out for. That is, if I could only watch one game in week 2, Tennessee, NC State would be up there.
It'll be a huge one. Although,
Texas, Michigan's the first game I'm going to watch, but it's a fairly weak lineup week 2.
Anytime there's a weak lineup, there's bound to be some upsets happening. Somebody's going to get snake bit one way or the other. That BYU SMU game, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Do we have any game times or kickoff times announced for week 3?
Some of them, like Alabama, Wisconsin, that's going to be on big noon kickoff. As I mentioned, Georgia, Kentucky, I believe, will be on ABC. Notre Dame, Purdue's going to be on CBS. Oh, there's a few others. Well, I know they're not putting Indiana, UCLA on CBS. That'd be torture.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that they won't.
Anything can happen.
Look at some of those CBS games last year.
Yeah.
And some of those NBC primetime games, Maryland and Charlotte.
Oh, man. I couldn't go near that game. It was like, I watched bits and pieces, but that was it. Oh, man. Oregon State, I believe that's going to be on Fox.
Yeah, I would think so. I think that will get picked up. Where did you have Notre Dame, Purdue?
It's on CBS at 2:30 p.m. Central Time. Washington State, I believe, is on NBC. That's going to be the NBC game of the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Air Force at Baylor. Where does that game go? Is that an ESPN2 game? Is that an FS1 game?
Most likely, because I mean, it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Coach Aranda, because if he can't win that game, his seat's gonna get hotter. There's Texas A&M, Florida. Coach Napier.
All right, Jackson. Anything else for us tonight?
That's about all for tonight. And I got to say, it's going to be fun seeing the rest of the kickoff times get announced on, I believe it's going to be 2-3 days after Memorial Day. I'm counting down to it already.
Nice.
Here we go.
Appreciate you being here, Jackson. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mark. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got our guy Porter stopping by. Porter, how you doing? Thanks for waiting.
Good afternoon. No problem. Good to hear from you. Well, it's definitely exciting seeing this lineup. I know my fellow Georgia fans were kind of disappointed in the 12 o'clock start, but I think what I tried to tell them is when you're the 12 o'clock game, that has become the time slot that the TV execs expect you to really carry the load for the TV. In other words, take it as a compliment. Do you agree with that now?
Yes and no. And why I say that is that, of course, you're saying all this because prime time was where it was at, and next to prime time was that 3:30 slot. Well, Fox countered that by thinking, okay, ESPN is entrenched, ESPN and ABC with these 3:30 and primetime games, that why don't we go after noon? And we have a conference that's our premier conference that likes to play noon football anyway. And it gets cold in November and day games are preferable. So they built up starting in 2017 this big noon kickoff, biggest game of the day is at noon. Well, that's a Fox thing. As you well know, while Fox is doing its thing with the likes of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, pretty much those are the three teams that always play at noon. They're playing somebody. And probably 20% of the time it's a Big 12 game when there's a better Big 12 game than anything they can find in the Big 10, then it's and there's going to be a scarcity of those because they've taken away Oklahoma and Texas, of course. But what's been the offering on ESPN has been a really good SEC game. What I consider to be a really good SEC game. It's more about the third game down the rung. So a lot of LSU, Mississippi State kind of games and Auburn and Texas A&M kind of games at noon on ESPN. And then the ABC game is a lot of ACC games, a lot of Clemson, Syracuse at noon, and Florida State, Wake Forest. That's a lot of ABC at noon. So the ABC ESPN offering, and this is going to be the ABC offering, has not been a great matchup. So I'm surprised Clemson, Georgia. I'm just surprised that they went that route. Maybe they think Notre Dame and Texas A&M is just more of a novelty, I suppose.
Well, I think I don't know. I think the ESPN / Disney execs, I think they really feel threatened by Fox, for one thing. Let's just say that. So I think that whenever they see Fox having success in that time slot, it may cause them to go, we better get out our, we better start putting our best games at noon to kind of counteract what the other conference is doing and what the other network is doing. So, everything is becoming this kind of bipolar. I don't know. It's weird. It's almost like the Cold War. College football is becoming like the Cold War with the Soviet Union. It's like all these countries are lining up behind either the West or the commies. So it's becoming a Big Ten SEC world. So
yes,
it's even that way with the TV execs, and I know, and I don't think I'm being dramatic by saying that. I think that's what it's becoming.
Yes, it is. Although, to an extent, it's always been that. There's just more money on the line now. And for the first time, you have conferences that are not on every network. The Big Ten, I know that it's been the perception that it's been a Fox network or a Fox conference, and it has, because the best game of the year has been selected to go on to Fox since 2017. But ABC had the next choice, ABC / ESPN of the Big Ten. And so you would see Ohio State and Penn State playing on ABC or ESPN, and you'd see Michigan, Penn State, and you would see the Big Ten has been a prominent member on ABC and ESPN. But now they've split. There's no Big Ten on ABC or ESPN. And obviously there's no SEC teams on Fox. So yeah, you're right. There's been more of a split, and there's more at stake, and there's more money at stake.
Yeah, it's funny how everything's kind of lining up that way. But in terms of the actual, I guess to get more into the more fun discussion, I heard someone raise the question down here. What's the worst case scenario for the SEC week 1? And obviously somebody said 0-4 for the 4 big games. What do what do you predict? And I say the 4 games: Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, LSU, and Southern Cal, and Florida and Miami. How do you think the SEC does with those 4?
Well, I would be quite surprised if they lost all 4. First and foremost, although Georgia could arguably be playing the best of the teams outside the conference, that's probably Notre Dame. Georgia's going to be a substantial favorite in that game, and I expect them to win unless something drastically changes my mind. It's going to be extremely difficult for Clemson to score points in that game. I think that Florida's got a fighting chance against Miami. They're at home, and those teams are pretty comparable, even though Florida's forecasted to have a much worse season. That's all based on schedule more than it is talent. And USC and LSU, I give the slight lean to LSU to win that game. I'm going to call that one more of a 60-40 LSU lean. I think Florida's got an even money fighting chance playing at home in the Swamp. And I think that also brings us to another reason why Clemson and Georgia's at noon, is that Florida-Miami is the weakest of the 3, and they're going to sandwich that in to draw viewers that stay for Clemson, Georgia, and then with the big build up to Texas A&M, Notre Dame. And so they're going to sandwich in their worst of the 3 offerings at 3:30. So my guess is that the SEC is going to go 2-2, but if they break in either direction, it's 3-1 SEC.
Yeah. I'm thinking 3-1 myself. I will say this about Georgia. In addition to all the great qualities that Kirby got from Saban, one of those is one of many, is that he knows how to prepare his team for the opening game of the season. I think he's going into his 9th season. He's 8-0 in openers, and that includes openers against North Carolina, Clemson, Oregon. I'm trying to think who else big we've played in opening games. So, I mean, and these aren't gimmies either. So, Kirby that's just one thing that, I mean, one of many good qualities he has is that when we get to that first game of the season, we're ready to go. So, and to even have that in his worst year, his first year when we went 8-5, to beat a pretty good North Carolina team was, says a lot about his ability. So, but
true.
You were I was thinking about something. I was driving home listening to your show, and now I'm home. But when you're talking about those kickoff games, I want to see if I'm right about this. You were talking about the New Jersey game and the Meadowlands and all that. It's a pretty well known game from what when I was growing up. But I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of those games had a huge impact on the national championship. When Colorado won it in 90, they won. What did they go 10-1-1? Was that their record?
Yes.
And wasn't that one tie against Tennessee in one of those kickoff games?
Yes.
Okay.
31-all, I believe.
And I want to say it was in some crappy field like at Anaheim Stadium or something like that.
I am not 100% positive, but I'm almost certain you nailed it.
Yeah. Because I seem to remember it being on, how they used to do it in the 70s, where even in NFL, if you went to a stadium that also played baseball, you have to play, leave the red dirt down, which is, the divas in the NFL would never go for that now. But believe it or not, they actually did that in the 70s. So, but I do remember a field kind of that condition where I want to say, I can't remember who came back on who, but yeah, I mean, if that game goes obviously Tennessee's way, then Colorado is not a national champion.
Yeah, there were only about 27 different ways Colorado should not have been the national champion that year.
Yeah, I know. But, as a Georgia fan, I'm kind of glad they at least shared it with Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So the idea of Georgia Tech winning outright just, makes my stomach, it makes me want to puke. So I still don't want to, even as far back as it's been, I still don't want them to be able to claim
Especially
that.
playing in a weak ACC and playing a bowl game against the 15th ranked team in the country.
Yeah, I know. And they won it in the Citrus Bowl too. So, they didn't even go to a major bowl. So, but hey, I want to compliment you too on the. I thought your SEC breakdown was fantastic.
Thank you.
So now, is the Big Ten one out yet, or are you waiting on that one?
Well, I was hoping to release it earlier today, but I got backed up by a number of things. And this is probably awful programming, but I released it like seconds before I came on. I had just finished editing like seconds before, and I just said, you know what, let her fly. And so it's out there.
Yeah, it's the one you did on the SEC was really good. I mean, it was so thorough, and I like kind of the themes that you had, that you kind of made people aware of. Some of them were, just teams like Auburn and Florida. I mean, some of these teams really went through some down periods, and they really did not show as strongly as I thought they were going to show. I want to say Auburn in the 60s and 70s was really went through a down period. So I thought Auburn was going to be top 5 for everything, and they really didn't show up as strongly as I thought they would be. And Tennessee too. They went through some tough period, kind of around the same time in the 70s. But I will say, I think as good as Georgia looked in your breakdown, and I think you're totally justified to rank them as high as you did. But I think the difference is, my first Georgia game I remember watching was the 78 Bluebonnet Bowl against Stanford. And so when you follow a team that long ago, you can kind of get a feel for kind of the history for what you remember as a kid. And by the way, they blew that game against Stanford, by the way. I think they lost. They were up by 20 and ended up losing it. But anyway, the thing about Georgia, the reason why they probably were so high on your list, is they never really went through a period like what Florida's going through right now.
Yeah.
Where you can't even get to a bowl game, or some of these, like what Arkansas went through with under Bielema. Georgia just has consistently been at their worst years, were really around that 6-6 mark or 6-5.
Yeah.
You never saw a 3-8 or a 4-7 out of Georgia. And then obviously when they get a very competent coach like Mark Richt, they can do, really good things, consistently good things. I'm not saying Mark Richt obviously didn't win a national championship, but I mean, he went to numerous BCS bowls and won SEC championships. And then obviously Kirby took it to a different level, but Vince Dooley, won 6 SEC championships. So when you have that kind of consistency all the way back to when Dooley started in 64, it really says a lot about that program. And you're right. And you're also right about LSU. LSU, I do remember LSU in the starting after pretty much from the earthquake game against Auburn in 88 until maybe the early 2000s, they were pretty much weren't heard of. I mean, they really didn't. They never really sniffed an SEC championship, really, all through the 90s. DiNardo, they kind of thought DiNardo was going to bring him back, and he had I think one good year where they upset number 1 Florida, and I think that was 97, I believe. And they had Kevin Falk, and anyway, and then DiNardo was fired, and then I don't think there was anybody between DiNardo and Saban.
No.
So but yeah, I mean, it was a good breakdown. I enjoyed it. I want to say, are there any more? You did the ACC, right?
Yeah, so I did all the conferences, and now I want to throw them all together and compare the elites, especially. And then we'll come on here and go live with every conference individually and to hear from all of you.
That sounds good.
And I appreciate your comments about the SEC video because you probably realize that I do such exhaustive looks at the numbers and just doing math and compiling the lists and the numbers and the graphics and all that, that I'm pretty much just spitting out that video. So I would do a much better job and probably should give this some more thought in the future. That if I sat down and thought, okay, what are the themes about this history and what needs to be pointed out? I'm not doing that. I'm like typing the last graphic and then I'm just record and I just start talking and whatever comes to mind about how to narrate these lists comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I thought your point about LSU was really good because really from, like I said, from the late 80s all through the 90s, they had a few good wins, but they really didn't get good again. They didn't become relevant until Nick Saban took them over in, I guess it was 2000.
And Porter, to expand on your comment about Georgia football recently, it's easy to dismiss, like, let's say Kirby Smart's slice in history, not being dominant, but saying, well, when you mix it in with 100 years of football, it's only going to have so much impact. But that followed Richt, and there are more games, substantially more games being played now. And when you look at Richt taking over at the time that so you're stretching over 20 years now of a program under Richt that was a lower top 10 program. So it was, I think if you put all the numbers together, you could show that over his 15 years that he had a top 10 program. Lower half of the top 10, but still a top 10 program. Then you elevate that with Kirby just with ridiculous numbers. You're looking at over 20 years of football. So that becomes a substantial dominant or near dominant period of time, especially when you're playing more football games than they were when you're looking at 8 and 9 game seasons back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's been a really fun run, and unfortunately I never really got to experience it when I was a student there. We didn't have a lot of winning when I was there, unfortunately, in the 90s, but I mean, wasn't awful, but it wasn't great. And so now as an alum, and I have the resources to go to these games and all that, it's kind of fun that you can you can go and you have the money to do this stuff, and it's really fun as an alum to be able to enjoy it and reflect back on the way it was when you were there and all that. So it's been a fun run. I'll be honest with you, I think you and I have had this discussion. It's almost if you want to compare it to like a Ohio State, I feel like Mark Richt was like what John Cooper was, just could not get over the hump, and it took another guy to kind of take it to another level. And that, I think, Kirby is our version of Tressel. So maybe a tad bit better because he's got another national championship. But those two programs have shown that if you consistently make good hires and you support them, then you can have a run like what they've had, this century, starting in 2000. So
absolutely
been a fun run. All right. Well, good talking to you, man. I think
thank you, Porter.
I was about to get here from swim practice, so I better get off.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good night.
See ya.
All right. We will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate our guy Yakov stopping by. Yakov, you know that there's a big buildup here because you always intrigue me with your questions, your anecdotes from the past. So you've got a lot to live up to here.
Oh, man, okay. Mark, I'm gonna have to. I was gonna start with something else, but after that introduction, I might have to slightly change that, Mark. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna start with something different, and that's the following, Mark. Slightly crossing the NFL. Yeah, as you know, although I live in suburban Cleveland now, I think I mentioned before, I grew up in the Canton area, and this is I went to the Hall of Fame parade inductions every year from probably the late '70s, which I don't even remember, until sometime in the early 2000s when I stopped necessarily being a regular at that, even though I still think it's a nice event. So, almost 30 years. And there was one time, Mark, in 1999, when Joe Montana was he retired in 94, so 5 years later, it was in 1999. They had these parties in downtown that were really just for VIPs only. And I went down there just to sightsee, I guess you'd say. And I saw that there was should be admitting this, but I think it's past the statute of limitations. There was an opening in the back there. Nobody was watching. I sort of let myself in, and I am having a 3-minute conversation with Joe Montana, that he thought I was I was someone to be spoken to, that I had some type of big connection to Canton or so, or to the Hall of Fame. And we spoke for 3 minutes, and I just said, Joe, welcome to Canton. We're really happy to have you. Just want you to know that I watched you from the early '80s on. In fact, the first game for Super Bowl I really paid attention to fully was '82, Cincinnati and San Francisco. That was really the first season I fully paid attention to. '81, a little bit. And he said, "Thank you, really appreciate it. It's a great honor to be here." And then he moved on to someone else. So I don't know if that was exactly the boom you were looking for, but that's a 3-minute, not supposed to be there conversation to have with Joe Montana, who I might add, despite his great play, was not that much bigger than me, Mark. If he was bigger than me, it was like that.
Well, what I'm impressed with, Yakov, is that you were able to seamlessly work yourself into this big event, this shindig, and you were able to encounter Joe Montana. And it sounds like with no intimidation, that you were just able to present yourself and deliver with confidence.
I was a youngster then too, Mark. I was, how old was I? 20, 25, 24, I guess. I was 24.
Yeah.
And I wish it was, maybe it's better it wasn't the days of cell phones. Maybe I would have looked a little, might not have been so good. That's why I could do a little more conspicuously. So I hope that, you had some build up there, Mark. You were anticipating, I would say, some type of blast from the past historical thing. I hope that I didn't disappoint you or our fellow listeners with that story.
Of course you did not.
Okay. And again, Mark, he is I know it's 6'2", but listed as 6'1", 6'2", but I don't think he was that tall. He was thin. I know it was 5 years after retired. He probably wasn't training in the same type of way. But he wasn't. If he was bigger than me, it was by 5 pounds and half an inch.
Now, Yakov, I can't give a story, and in no way did I pull off the stunt that you did in breaking into a high-level party like that. But I did show up the next year at the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies in 2000 because one Tom Landry was being inducted.
Oh, right. Okay. He was in along with, I think that's the same year that the Franco Harris got in, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Although I blanked on everyone else. No one else mattered. But yes, being a historian of sorts, yes, I was at the time intrigued with everyone else. But now I just remember Tom Landry because that's why I went.
I remember that, Mark. I was, that's one of my favorite things about having grown up in Canton was I feel such a connection to the Hall of Fame, particularly that weekend. Especially when I was a young kid, I used to be so happy that Canton was the focus of the nation, at least the sports nation, for a day or two. Mark, two quick things here. After that, hopefully we had a little blast from the class there, historical. But we're talking about the times and whether or not you like noon or you like prime time or so. Mark, here I know you grew up in Ohio. To me, the epitome of college football is an overcast sky in Columbus, East Lansing, in Ann Arbor, in Madison, Wisconsin. Chilly air, overcast, and noon. To me, that's I know there's other good times for football, but I guess for me, Mark, it could be. I just say the same thing. It could be overcast sky, chilly, noon in Bowling Green, Ohio, or in Athens, Ohio, even though I go to Max games, to me, that time and that atmosphere, that is, to me, that's still the epitome of college football. Any feelings on that feeling?
Well, I understand what you're saying there, because that usually came along with November football, but
Right.
yeah, I have no affinity toward gray skies and a chill in the air.
Okay, you must have been, the Novembers must have been tough for you growing up then, because you had a lot of such days.
They weren't tough for me. I was just a different person back then. I would, my buddy and I were just talking about this the other day, and talking to, who were we talking to? Basically, they couldn't believe, because they grew up in the South. I think it was his wife, who's from Tallahassee. Just, we're telling stories about playing football out when it's 4 or 5 degrees below zero and not thinking anything of it, and doing that on a regular basis. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Mark,
it didn't impact me then.
Yeah.
I was the dad at the bus stops with my kids when it was 0 out, and I'd have a sweatshirt on and shorts standing out at the bus stop. Not anymore. No.
That almost reminds me, Mark, almost the opposite. Remember in the '85 Bears Giants game that Steve McMichael told all the defensive players, you may not wear sleeves. It was like 20 below zero too, and I like that. I like when people have that attitude, football or otherwise.
I do remember that. And the very next week, of course, the Los Angeles Rams came in for the NFC Championship game, and I can't say that they were miserable or intimidated or anything like that, but it was in everyone's mind in a narrative of the game that, well, the Rams aren't going to play well. They're not going to want to be there. They're going to be miserable and cold, and they didn't score a point. I know that.
Yeah, I think they were on the sideline all shivering like that, but all wrapped up in those coats they used to wear back in those bathrobes. I'm not sure what the right word, but those long robes they used to wear back in those days. Another thing I want to ask you, Mark, is I know you worked in broadcasting for many years. As we know, the NFL is not going to back down. They're playing December Saturdays. If college wants to go against that, which I think is a terrible idea, I don't think much as I love college football, the NFL seems like a beast that you can't slay, and nor do I want to slay them. But I'm just saying I like the NFL, I love college football. If they try to go head to head with that, how badly would a regular season NFL game beat a playoff game in interest?
Okay, well, it obviously depends on what regular season NFL game we're talking about versus what college football playoff matchup. But
one of the games will be Kansas City and Texas.
Do we know what game?
I thought they did already decide that.
Okay,
Texas
so the NFL's released the schedule.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Baltimore and Pittsburgh are also going to play that one of those Saturdays also.
Okay, so the date that was brought to my attention was December 21st. Is that correct? That would be, let's see.
December 21st, yeah. That's one of them. I don't know if they're doing much before that, but that definitely, that's about when they go to December. That's about when the NFL starts December and just keeps it through the playoffs until the AFC NFC Championship.
Yeah, so it sounds like 2 weeks prior to that would be the 7th, and that would be conference championship weekend. So the 21st would be the first round of playoff games. So you would have the 5-12 game, the 6-11, the 7-10, and the 8-9. And I got to think that there's probably going to be a Friday game and then 3 Saturday games. I would think that would be college football's setup.
I would think so too.
I haven't looked at it, but I don't know that they've announced it.
There's at least 2 NFL games that day that are
wow,
teams that people want to watch.
Yeah, you're going up writing against that.
That's a hard lift for the college football against those Pittsburgh and Baltimore and Texas and Kansas City.
Well, I think college football has something going for it in that this is a novelty,
right? Yeah,
of sorts. It's going to be the first time. Again, if people are drawn by names. And so if a lot of oddball teams make the playoffs in these third and fourth place finishes in the Big Ten and the SEC, or let's say an Oklahoma State makes it from the Big 12, or it's an Ole Miss, or it's a Washington or Iowa or somebody like that, that's going to hurt college football. But if that day's loaded with Oklahoma and Michigan and Florida State and Alabama,
maybe they're willing to
well, they're going to have to play sometime. So they're going to play against these games. I don't know when they're going to play if they don't. They'd have to play a doubleheader on Thursday and a doubleheader on Friday, and they don't want to play games at 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast.
Right.
They go to 1 o'clock in the morning. So,
well, the article here says NFL sent a clear warning shot to college football with its schedule release on Wednesdays that they will not be letting go of Saturdays anytime soon. That's the headline there.
Yeah, I haven't looked
hold
at
steady on Saturday. We're not giving that to you.
But somebody did call about that, and that's the first I had heard of that a couple of days ago, and they were mighty upset about the NFL not backing off. But they're running a business.
Yeah, they've been playing Saturdays. God knows how long
they have been
watching.
And I don't know when that started, but I got to think that started not long before we started watching.
Certainly in the 80s, the playoff games on Saturdays until the
sure. Yeah, but I even remember in the late 70s that they would play regular season games as soon as college football was done. And Army Navy was done the week before. The last 2 regular season weeks in the NFL, they would play a doubleheader on Saturday. They'd play a 1 o'clock game and a 4 o'clock game on Saturday.
Right. Yeah. So they're not going to give that up so easy. They feel this is their time.
No, they've even expanded it to a night game then.
Yeah.
Triple headers.
I enjoy that as 8 p.m. games on Saturday after college football is, temporarily dormant until the bowl games start going again. Yeah. Mark, maybe you see any path for them to play on Thursdays? Play some playoff games on a Thursday?
Well, that's what they might do is play a game on Thursday, play a game on Friday, and then only play 2 games on Saturday. But they have to play 4 games.
Yeah, they're not going to play a Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. Yeah, not that time of year. Yeah. They can't do Sunday unless they're going to be really weird and do Maction style and play on a Wednesday or something.
Yeah, unless they do that, because they're not going to play on Sunday because they're going to run into more NFL games.
Then it'll be the whole gamut. There'll be, all but 4 teams will be playing. So.
I think this is good for college football. Actually, it's not good for college football, but I think it's good for just the way this is headed with all the money and just thinking we can do whatever we want and that we're making zillions of dollars. And maybe if the rating returns aren't as great as you had hoped they would be, you're not going to make quite as much money as you thought.
Right. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, this is interesting, Mark. I love talking about the game itself, but right now we have to have other content. So,
well, as you well know, Yakov, the NFL is so powerful that the Rose Bowl, which it's funny because the Rose Bowl has taken this high stance that it doesn't move for anything.
Right. Yeah.
And so even the playoff games have not moved the Rose Bowl. The playoff games have had to move around the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl said, we're on a New Year's Day at 5:30 Eastern, except for when the NFL it's on a Sunday, and then we play January 2nd.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the tradition, they have that tradition, but even the NFL knocks that tradition a little bit. Well, actually not a little bit, completely. Mark, yeah, thank you, Mark. I enjoyed discussing this and other matters with you, Mark, and I hope I'll come back sometime soon and I'll hopefully have another historical. I actually have a really good one, Mark, but maybe I should hold my powder on that one and wait for the next time I call.
You can do that. I look forward to them.
Yeah, that'll give us something to think about.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. I look forward to hearing the rest of the show.
Thanks, Yakov.
Goodbye, Mark.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy Chris stopping by to talk some college football. Chris, thanks for your patience.
Oh, no problem, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you. How are
Good.
you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Well, I just wanted to apologize for the tone of my last call. I didn't. I was a little bit on the defensive there. I didn't mean to get too offensive with you. I get frustrated, is what it is. I have my own perspective, which I'm not even saying it's the right perspective, but it doesn't always agree with yours, which I agree with most of the time. But so I wanted to extend an apology, if that's okay.
Well, I accept your apology. I didn't think that it was necessary at all, from what I remember, but I
I
appreciate
got.
that. I very much appreciate that. But again, I don't think it was necessary. But thank you so much for that. And no, I enjoy our conversations. I don't always agree with you, and don't always agree with your perspective or your ideas. But at the same time, I always know that it's going to be an interesting phone call. And many times I do agree with what you have to say. And so what do we have on our mind tonight?
Oh, well, I did something you might not be interested in. I don't know for sure, but I just thought I'd share it with you anyway. I did the last season's proficiency, and what I determined was that top five were what you thought it would be. Southeast number one, Pacific 12 number two, Big 10 number three, Big 12 number four, and Atlantic Coast number five.
Okay.
That's based on what I do, which is just evaluate the way the teams were.
How
And
close were those rankings?
the SEC actually has a fairly, I don't want to say it's substantial, but it's Big Ten, I think, was right around. It's kind of, at first I got them, if they get right around 60, I don't know if this will make any sense to anybody, but if they're at 60, that means that they're where they need to be. Well, at any rate, Big Ten was right at 60, and then I figured out that I did Indiana's rating wrong or something like that, so they dropped just like just a very nick below 60, but at any rate, they're right at 60 for the most part. And then I think Pacific 12 was 60.9, and then SEC was 62.5, so they were ahead. And then Big 12 was 57, and I think Atlantic Coast was 56.8. So they're all within, like, I don't know, what would that be, 4 or 5%? They're all within like 5% of each other is what it kind of fits into.
So how does that compare to other seasons? Meaning, if a conference comes in at, let's say, 57 and another conference at 58, is that a substantial difference, or is that a
Well,
insignificant difference?
Well, 57, I don't know how to really, that's just what it is. But I'm thinking for the Big 12, if they want to be as good as the SEC, then of course that's going to be like, well, we still, we need to make more, get better. But it's not so far outside of it, though, that they're like, having to really reach to get better. So 57 is probably reasonable. And then, like I said, the Atlantic Coast was a little bit behind that. Kind of surprised me a little bit because I thought the Atlantic Coast actually had a pretty good year, but it's within, like I said, it's like they're all within like 5% of each other. So, you can probably figure that out in your own mind, can't you, about how close that might be?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I tried real hard to use the right numbers. So this isn't just like me winging it. I mean, 60% is where they kind of need to be. So anybody under 60%, which actually kind of includes the Big Ten, even though really not, even though they're right at 60, that means that they're right where they need to be if they're at 60.
So is that math a simple addition of all the teams put together, or is it an addition of all the teams divided by the number of teams?
Well, I just take the average, so it's all the teams added together and divided by the total. It's not like weighted or anything, though. It's just composite average.
What is typically the difference between the number one team in the country and the number 135 team in the country, or however many teams there are that particular year?
How many percentages?
Yeah.
I think Kent State was like at 30%, and so it's like 70% difference, I think. Because like Kent State was like at 30%, and Michigan's like at 100%. So it's at least 70%. It might even be as high as 75.
Did Michigan, in fact, finish number one?
Yes.
Okay.
That was kind of why I was trying to apologize to John Adamo. I was like kind of short with him, but I was just frustrated because, kind of like carrying their banner around like they did everything they had, and they did for the most part. But Yeah, they were definitely the best team last year. There's no two ways about it. But I was just frustrated because I didn't necessarily get what I wanted, but that doesn't really matter. I just you know, Michigan deserved the championship, so that's what it really matters, I guess. And it's not because I say so. People think it's, oh well, Chris has to say so. No, it has nothing to do with me. It's just that, yeah, in my proficiency, they finished number one when they were actually number one before they beat Washington, so they just held their title. Yeah, I had them as the number two teams, number one and number two, Michigan and Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, leading into the game. Of course, after the game, it was just Michigan, but so they deserve the national championship. No two ways about it. You said something about Colorado maybe not being a legitimate titleist in 1990. Mark, is that based on? I guess it doesn't really matter, but do you want to explain that? Maybe you don't want to.
All right. So in that particular year, as you well know, we had a split national championship as voted on by the writers. And was that at the time that the coaches poll took over, or was that still the United Press International? Regardless, we had a split national championship and Georgia Tech went undefeated. And I just have concerns or questions or misgivings about a team being awarded a national championship that tied a game,
Right.
lost a game.
Right.
Then they also had a game in which they were given a extra down to score the game-winning touchdown. Now, to be fair to them, the ball was spiked on a previous play when they thought they had an extra play.
They spiked the ball at fourth down.
Yeah, so we never would have known what would have happened. It's not like there are certain circumstances in which there's an officiating error and we know, okay, that was the last play of the game. There's an officiating error. The other team would have won. In this case, we don't know what would have happened because obviously Colorado would not have spiked the ball. They would have ran a play to try to score.
But they did spike fourth down. I mean,
but we don't.
No, they did. They spiked it on fourth down. I mean, that's.
Yeah, but they didn't know. They were misled by the yard markers.
Okay. Well, the officiating, I guess, was part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fourth down though. They spiked it on fourth down.
That's and so they scored a touchdown on a fifth play, a fifth down.
Right. Exactly.
And then they also had this play against Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, in which Notre Dame would have scored what most likely would have been the game-winning touchdown.
Yes.
So you had a team that, in a sense, lost 3 games.
In a sense, I suppose, yeah.
Won the national championship.
Yeah.
I have a difficult time with that.
No, I understand. I just I was actually at that game. I saw it was in the back end zone of it, but I didn't see the block or whatever that was I guess led to the, it looked like he scored. It didn't look like there was from my angle, I couldn't really see anything that had happened that made me think it wasn't a legitimate score by was it Rocket Ismail? So yeah, if I had to, I thought that was the end of the game too, because I remember seeing it happen and didn't know that there was a flag, didn't think there was a flag, and not thinking there was a penalty. Thought I'd seen my team lose because I went to Colorado. I don't know if you knew that. I actually attended that school, but I wasn't there at the time. But anyway, yeah, I can understand all that, I guess. But then at the same time, though, it's like if you don't think Georgia Tech was a champion, then who would be your national champion? I guess it doesn't. Do you have a favorite, I guess?
Well, I do believe that Georgia Tech, despite playing a weak schedule,
they beat Virginia, I guess, at a time when Virginia was pretty good. I don't know if you were.
Yeah, they were number 1 ranked in the country, I believe.
Yeah,
they didn't finish well, but they were number 1 at the time. That was a big CBS game, Georgia Tech and Virginia. But that's not Georgia Tech's issue. Much like other seasons, they didn't, of course, schedule their games, or at least schedule their conference games, and they did not make their bowl assignment. That was the limitation of playing in the ACC and being an ACC champion that got designated to play in the Citrus Bowl against the 2-loss team.
Right. Well, Nebraska had a good team, though. I mean,
they had a good team.
Yeah. I don't know.
But we would like to see the best teams in the country play for the championship.
Yeah. No, I agree. Do you have a favorite maybe that who would you have rather seen him play, I guess, instead of Nebraska? Do you have a favorite?
Well, those two teams should have played. That's who should have played.
Who?
Colorado and Georgia Tech.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of think so too. It's kind of too bad that didn't happen, I guess. But of course, that's kind of hindsight, though, right? Isn't that kind of like when 1984 when BYU didn't play Washington? It's like that's kind of interesting, even though, and I don't want to necessarily bring that up again, Mark, but Washington could have played BYU. I mean, they had that option. Maybe I don't know if they should have done it or not, but it's like for all the people that want to hate on BYU, it's like BYU did everything they could to get Washington, aside of from making them come,
Oh, it wasn't BYU's fault.
right. I mean, Washington chose to play Oklahoma. I mean, that's probably the smartest thing they could have done, in all fairness. But we shouldn't be saying, well, BYU they picked the best team that they thought. I guess I don't know for sure, but they picked the best team they thought they could play. I don't know where Michigan sit along the lengths of who they would try to bring in, but they picked the best team that I thought that they could play and still win a title. That's about all I know about it. And you have your own kind of misgivings about Michigan, but that team actually had against good passing teams. I think they actually did pretty well. I don't know if that really matters, but that Michigan team actually played several teams that were pretty good passing teams that year. I don't know if you knew that or not, but they kind of held their own against them. I don't know how many of them they beat, but
yeah, I'm not saying that Michigan was a bad team or that they did not have talent. It's just that they were a 6-5 football team. So they should not have been playing a team that was competing for a national championship.
Well, I mean, again, though, I just want to share this with you again, Mark, because it's like I think it's relevant information. For all the complaints or whatever about whether or not BYU, I understand it. To be honest, I've studied it long enough. I think I kind of know what really went on. But what BYU didn't do, and this isn't just me saying it because I really looked into this hard. What BYU didn't do, Iowa did, and that's just a fact. So really, what it came down to, whether people want to believe it or not, BYU and Iowa share a championship that year. They just do. I mean, it's like we can argue about it, well, why, and this and that, but well, you don't like it either. But it's not me making it up, Mark. It's true.
It's not that I don't like it; it's that it doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. That's why I don't like you saying that, because it does. It makes, on that scale I told you about, you said the difference between the bottom and the top. Remember you asked me about it?
Yes.
Okay, it's 0 to 100. Well, BYU can't get to 100 without Iowa, and vice versa, I guess. And the same thing also, and not only that, the other team that I think that you thought maybe should have won, and I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth. You said Florida. Well, Florida tied LSU, and Florida can't get there without LSU. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's actually kind of the same situation. So it's like you can pick Florida, but they can't get there by themselves, just like BYU can't get there by themselves.
Well, let's go back to your original statement, and let me ask you this: what was Iowa's record in 1984?
8-4-1.
Okay.
Right.
Why are you coronating them as a national champion?
Well, without getting into all the reasons, 8-4-1. It has to do. It's not going to confuse people probably. There's a 2-to-1 separation between the P5 and the G5. 2-to-1, which is huge, by the way. It's not just a little bit. It's not like a little step. It's like a 2-to-1 means that on average P5 teams are twice as good as G5. So the separation becomes almost negligible if you include Iowa, because they won half of their 8-4-1. That's what separation's 2-to-1, I think. Anyway, you put them together, and what it is it's kind of like you get what you need from either one, and together they make one titleist. It's just a fact. I mean, it's like people don't have to like it. They can say, well, yeah, Iowa doesn't deserve it. Okay, go ahead and say that. That's fine. I don't really care. But at the same time, you can say BYU doesn't deserve it. But you put them two together, all of a sudden you're looking at a national champion. So what I'm telling you is that, separately probably not, but together you do. And it's the same thing with Florida and Louisiana State. And it's together they make a titleist. It's just fact. But whatever, if you don't want to use it, don't. But
why doesn't Ohio State have a claim to the national championship in 1984 if they beat Iowa by 19 points and they won the Big Ten championship and had a better record?
I could maybe address that, but I'm not really going to. The only thing I'm going to tell you, USC in 1978 lost to Arizona State, who had a 9-3 record, and they actually kind of need to make that up, and they make it up in 1984. So it's more about whether or not USC can make it up rather than Ohio State, because Ohio State really wasn't in the chase that year, but USC was. So it's more about all I'm really doing. It's like cut and paste, I guess, but and really USC doesn't even really need USC to make it, but it's like it just makes it to where people can say, okay, well, I understand now why they're a national championship, because they didn't lose a game, sort of thing. Well, the thing with BYU is they didn't lose a game, but they also didn't play in a major championship season, right? They only played some of the, even you said that, so it's true. But what they didn't make up for, Iowa actually does, and I think I've actually kind of shown that to be kind of a fact. But even if you don't believe it, in 1996 they went 14-1 and lost to Washington. So really, what that kind of did actually was it made it to where if you can put those two together, which I know you normally wouldn't want to do that, but regardless, if you do that, then all of a sudden what BYU didn't do in 84, they made up for in 96. And so they're a national championship anyway, even without Iowa. But I don't really like doing that because, and you probably don't like that, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter to me if you like it. I mean, it's still a truth. So, and that's what I base that's the other thing is that's what I base my scale on, 0 to 100. And if I, basically what it is I add what BYU did together with what Iowa did, and then you divide by you have to do a fraction of it, because it's like they don't quite add perfectly together, but when you add it correctly together, it equals 100. So you put them two together and you get one national championship. And the same thing actually happens with Louisiana State and Florida. So I'm not favoring one set of it. I'm saying that there's two of them. There's Florida and Louisiana State are one, BYU and Iowa are two. And I guess, oh yeah, that's the other thing. I think Washington, for whatever reason, they probably should have been recognized as a national championship, because I think they had the highest rating as far as without, they should be like the New York Times champion is what they should be, but they weren't. They picked Florida for some reason.
Chris, I have one simple question, and it's the only question I have, and then I'm done. And maybe I'll regret asking this question, but how in the world do you take results from a different season to justify a ranking or a rating of a different season?
This is gonna go right up your alley, Mark, and you might not even like me doing this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Ohio State claims 5 championships or 8 or however many. I don't even know how many. It doesn't really matter to me because I'm not involved with it. I don't really care. But to get Ohio State up to whatever it is that they want to be, the only way to do that is to include all these disputed championships that they might not. I'm not going to say they don't deserve them, because that's who am I to say if they do or don't. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not the one that makes that decision. But what I did was I took 1957, 61, and 2012. And when you add all those three together, it's kind of the same thing. Separately, none of them do, probably. I mean, maybe not. I think they can claim all three, I think. 57, 61, and 2012. I think they actually claim all three of them, which I don't really care. But really, to get one, you have to put all three together to get one. So I'm putting 3 to get 1 for Ohio State. I'm only putting 2 to get 1 for BYU. I'm not favoring one or the other. I'm not I'm going to make sure I figure out something that gives BYU a title. It's not that at all. But I'm using the same approach that Ohio State's using to get those 3. And I'm only counting it as 1. So that those 3 together, and it is a legitimate title, by the way. I'm not oh, okay. So it's each one's a third? No, not really. But it's if you want to include all those 3 titles, though, you have to kind of divide it by 3, unfortunately, to get 1. And the same thing with BYU. To get 1, you have to divide it by 2. To get 1.
Okay.
Otherwise, they don't have one.
I'm simply going to make one statement, and then you can say whatever you want, and then we'll end the call. Chris, it makes absolutely 0 sense to.
It makes perfect sense.
Let me finish my statement. It makes 0 sense to take results from other seasons to justify a championship in a particular season.
Okay, Mark, I'll try to explain it one more way, and then if you don't want to hear it, it's fine. I understand.
There is no way you can explain this that it's going to be valid.
No, I can. What BYU didn't do, what they didn't do in 84, they did in 96. It's just that simple. And so when you put the two of them together, and vice versa, by the way. What they didn't do in 84, they did in 96. What they didn't do in 96, they did in 84. You put the two of them together, and it's like a mesh. It meshes together to create one. And that, by the way, the same thing happens for Washington. What they didn't do in 84, they did in 96. And so I basically, and that's how I made it to where I could use this rating I use. I'm not taking one away from the other. I'm actually saying they both won a championship. I'm not saying, well, BYU did, Washington didn't. I'm saying, no, they both did. And by the way, if you look at the 84 season, using the technique I just told you about, actually recognizes both teams, and it also actually recognizes Florida. So it actually does everything it's supposed to do in a way that should make everybody happy. And the fact that you don't like it kind of makes me wonder why you don't like it, because I'm not favoring one team over the other. I'm not saying it's BYU. I'm not saying it's Florida. I'm not saying it's Washington.
I am not accusing you of favoring anyone. I'm accusing you of having a system that doesn't make any sense. And this
Well, it
is
makes
why it
perfect
doesn't make any sense.
What doesn't make
Because
sense?
we are trying to determine champions for particular seasons. I don't even know why this needs to be explained. It's so obvious.
Well, I could take a title away if that's what you want me to do. I'll take all those to do what you just told me to do. Means we can tell the 57, 61, and 2012 Ohio State teams that they don't have a title.
If
You
I
just take-
had if
That's what
I
that-
had a team of tennis players, let's say, and we called my team the red team, and you had a team of tennis players and we called your team the blue team.
Okay.
And in 1984, I beat you. You represented your team. I
Okay.
won the match.
Yeah.
But in 12 years later, you had somebody else from your team beat someone else from my team. And you said, well, this means that really we won in 1984. That's a version of what you're doing.
Well, okay. Just for clarity purposes, and I'll just say it one more time, Mark, I'm not really picking any champion. It's not really my job to do it anyway. I'm just saying that what I did, if you do what I did and try to make sense of it, and if you don't want to, I guess you don't have to. What it actually does is it recognizes, to your credit, I guess, I don't know, it actually probably gives Washington a title. Is that what you want me to tell you? Okay, fine. I'll tell you that because that's probably what you want to hear anyway, that it takes a title away from BYU and gives it to Washington. But the reality is, regardless, even if that's what actually happens, which is kind of what you're trying to tell me is what actually happened, in my opinion, it's just an opinion, because I've done this. I mean, I don't just like sit down and try to figure out ways to make sure it's BYU. That isn't who I am as a person. In my opinion, the best team in 1984 was BYU. So you can go ahead and give it to Washington. I mean, I think you already have. I think I've seen your shows where you've done it. But I don't know that there's really justification for that other than just you telling me that that's who the best team was. So if that's what you want to do, go ahead. But I don't think that's probably the fairest thing to do in the world. Or
Okay.
you can give it to Florida. Give it to Florida too.
One more time. My argument tonight, and on many, many occasions with you, Chris, has nothing to do with the particular teams involved. It has nothing to do with any of that or who I like or who I want to recognize as the champion. It has everything to do with there being absolutely no logic to taking results from one season and placing them on another season.
No, what I did, I tried to explain it to you. I'll try it one more time. Okay.
No,
What
please
BYU
don't.
was, no, let me do it, please.
Please, no, please
let me-
don't, Chris.
Well, no, let me do it. What they didn't do in 84, they did in 96. I mean, it's that simple, Mark, and it's not me just saying it. What they didn't do in 84, they did in 96. What they did in 96, they didn't do in 84. You put them together, you get one title. It's a fact.
The players, it's not a fact. It's not a fact.
And it's not me like figuring out some stupid thing the same thing happens to Ohio State 57, 61, and 2012. Nobody's going to want to count 57. Nobody's going to want to count 61.
None of those teams, none of those results, none of those games have anything to do with one another except for those teams representing the same schools and wearing the same colors.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, look, okay, go on Wikipedia and tell me that they don't have 1957, 1961, and 2012 listed as national champions. If you can do that,
that's
then
a much different conversation.
No, it isn't.
That's about a school claiming national championships in specific seasons that they believed they should be recognized for those particular seasons.
Well, I believe they should be recognized. I believe they should, but I don't think it should be as what do you put it? The best team in that season? Probably not. But yeah, if you put them all together, it's kind of like, I don't know what to tell you what it does, but if you put them all together, it's actually you have to use all three to do it, but you get one. And it's a legitimate claim. It's not like me just saying it. It's fair. I think they should count them. Is what I'm trying to tell you. But whatever.
Well, thanks for calling, Chris.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Okay. Any other calls, anyone? Any other calls? We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And we just released our Big Ten all-time program rankings video. Okay. Which actually does make sense because it's an all-time rankings video. Therefore, all the results are included for all the time. And we're not specifically saying this is Big Ten power rankings for 1991, but we're going to use results from 1951 and 2014 and to justify what happened in 1991. So all the results from all the years put together. Wow. I just it explains to me some of the other oddities, I'll be kind, oddities that I see out in our society. All right. We do appreciate you being here. Check out that Big Ten video. What we are going to do now that that's released is we're going to put them all together. We're going to run down number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on down the list. And we're going to come back live with all of you. And we are going to go conference by conference and get your comments, your questions, your concerns, your complaints, your arguments, your debates, everything that you've got for me on our all-time program rankings. Right here at the Voice of College Football. And Nick, we do appreciate your super chat that was posted for the entirety of the conversation with Chris, because I knew that's how you would like it. Mark, 1984 BYU was an all-time great team, right? I don't know. I don't know if they were or not. What I do know is that the only thing that counts toward any kind of conversation or debate about who should be the national champion in 1984 actually happened in 1984. That's the one thing I can state with clarity and conviction and with complete logic, that any particular college football season, the only results that matter are the results that happened that particular college football season. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time. The Clemson shows tonight, the Big 12 shows tonight, and the first Michigan call-in show. That's at 9 Eastern. So check that out as well, right here at the Voice of College Football.